But there's a false equivalency going on in the coverage of this race.
Their objectivity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage every day.
In an effort to appear balanced, to appear objective, mistakes are absolutely being made, and standards are being applied to both candidates here when Donald Trump is a different animal. He isn't.
Being objective is a mistake, say the libtards over on Morning Joe. This is absolutely hilarious. And for someone of a certain age like myself, who has been watching American politics from afar, from Europe, for years now, this is eerily similar to Donald Trump's 2016 campaign.
Insurrectionist.
Well, the crew over at Morning Joe on MSNBC, you know, the same crew that wanted Biden to continue running in this presidential race despite the fact that he was suffering from clear cognitive decline. Yeah, those people, they're furious that journalists would have the audacity of ever reporting anything negative on the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, because Trump is he's a special threat. And so since they've decided that Trump is a very special threat, well, then journalists should hide information about Kamala Harris from you.
Ana is just getting more and more based. What on earth is going on? She's on this massive redemption arc. It's been going on for, what, a year now? And over on Morning Joe, they are totally melting down. If you have the misfortune of ever going on Reddit, don't bother, believe me. I've done it for you. It is absolute shit show over there. They are melting down. And Ana is just dropping red pills all over the place. Let's hear what she has to say.
So you don't vote for Trump and definitely vote for Kamala Harris. In other words, they want the media to manipulate you and do the exact opposite of journalism. Don't believe me? Well, why don't we hear co-host Mike Barnicle make his case?
But there's a false equivalency going on in the coverage of this race, in that Donald Trump can say whatever crazy things he wants to say about submarines and sharks and electric batteries, whatever he wants to say. And it's not really covered in the sense that it's covered describing who said it, why he said it, and who the man is, Trump, out of his mind. And always in that story, in the equivalency, the false equivalency by too many reporters and too many American newspapers, there's also, by the way, Kamala Harris changed her mind on fracking.
What is he going on about? Trump has been under attack from the mainstream media since 2015. Daily. What's all this false equivalency nonsense he is on about? He has been under attack by the liberal mainstream media, and that's most of the mainstream media, by the way. Literally, the CNN, MSNBC, what we used to call newspapers, Washington Post, New York Times, all of that, day after day after day, and these guys are still whining about him. And they're saying pretty much the same things. I remember quite well back in 2015, 2016, they were losing their minds over Trump. And back then, I have to admit, I'm not quite a boomer, not quite that old, but nearly. I was writing myself all sorts of stuff on my Facebook page. That's what a near boomer I am. About exactly this topic, about how the mainstream media, they just lost their collective minds. Trump derangement syndrome. It dates back to then, and now it's all coming back with this election cycle.
Always throw in something like that in the coverage of the story. It's ridiculous. We don't cover the man for how dangerous he is.
Hey, don't scroll away. Come back. Because before the video continues, we just want to urge you to lend your support to TYT. You power our honest reporting. You do it at tyt.com/team, and we love you for it.
You don't cover the man for how dangerous he is? I don't know. I don't know what country I'm living in, but I feel like we get wall-to-wall coverage about Trump being a danger to this country.
Anna, oh my God, I think I'm in love. She is simply spitting facts here. Exactly. It's been wall to wall since 2015. Ever since Trump announced his candidacy, ever since he came down the golden escalator, it has been nonstop anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump every single day.
It is incessant. It is all they talk about on MSNBC. Did he just suggest that journalists shouldn't report on Kamala Harris changing her mind on fracking? Is that not an important policy that voters should be informed about? And also, is he under the impression that telling Americans the truth about where Kamala Harris stands on the issues automatically means that Donald Trump is going to win the election? This is, when I started my career, when I started working at TYT back in 2007, there really wasn't like left-wing media. There was like Fox News, and the right-wing media infrastructure was kind of being built. And I prided myself and the left wing on the fact that we didn't try to manipulate audiences, and we didn't try to lie to people or cover up the truth about our preferred candidates or preferred politicians. We didn't want to stoop low. And
well, I'm not so sure about that. Although the Young Turks have been around for quite a few years. I've watched them off and on. They've had their ups and downs. So yeah, it's been pretty clear, as far as I know, from the very start of the Young Turks, that they call themselves progressives, and therefore by definition they prefer progressive candidates. But Ana, regardless of that background, I think she's just fed up with it. She's like, it's like there's some kind of civil war going on at the Young Turks, or she's breaking out. She's like the butterfly breaking out of the chrysalis that she's been wrapped in tight, and now she's breaking through and is ready to spread her wings and fly. She is on fire here.
do what the right wing was doing with their misinformation, with the fact that they would omit incredibly relevant, important parts of the story in order to make Republicans look good and Democrats look bad.
Yeah, we call that lies of omission, and that has been going on for decades. But to be honest, I sympathize with Ana because I was in the same position myself. I mean, I'm older than Ana Kasparian, so I've been force-fed this media propaganda for longer than she has, for many more years than she has. And it is hard when you have to, when you break out, when you see the light and you realize that it has all been a sham. Not the media, yeah, they lie, but they lie by commission sometimes, but mainly they lie by omission. It's how they frame the narrative, as they say. And yeah, when I was young, we didn't use the term the narrative, but you know, the official story, however you want to put it. But yeah, she's fed up with it, and she is speaking her mind. And I have a feeling this is going to cause some major tensions and some major stresses between her and Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks.
And now we're in this awful era of conditioning audiences and readers to expect journalists to cheerlead like partisan hacks for one candidate or the other. And if you don't do it, if you don't engage in it, they get mad at you. You're supposed to be my cheerleader.
Good point. There was a time when journalists at least pretended to be unbiased. I say pretended because, in fact, bias has been around for decades, a century. I mean, if you look into the history of journalism at all, look into the history of the yellow press, as they used to call it in the States a century ago. The powers that be, the people who run the world, or in this case the United States, they have known about the power of the mass media for a very, very long time, and they have been wielding it against us. But the internet has brought change, and now, I mean, it's brought good change and bad change. It's made it possible for those in power to blanket us all with their points of view and with their narratives, but it has also made it possible for dissidents, for people who disagree with the mainstream narrative, to get their message out. And it looks like that message is breaking through to people, even to self-described progressives like Ana Kasparian at the Young Turks.
You're supposed to cheerlead for my preferred candidate. What are you doing? How dare you talk about Kamala Harris and how she went from being against fracking to now saying she's totally in favor of fracking? How dare you? The media doesn't fearmonger about Trump enough? Has he considered that maybe, just maybe, the media had been fearmongering about Trump so much, so often, that Americans have become desensitized to it?
Yeah, we call that the boy who cried wolf.
Has he considered that? Has he considered the fact that Joe Biden ran his campaign almost entirely on Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and it wasn't working? Why do you think it wasn't working? This is the most brain dead argument I have heard on MSNBC, and that is saying something, because there are a lot of brain dead arguments made on MSNBC. But we're about to hear more. So Joe Scarborough argues that journalists who are trying to be objective actually end up helping Trump. So maybe don't be objective. Let's watch.
Even Arlington, you've seen major newspaper outlets talk about, well, how will this impact Kamala Harris and the issue of Afghanistan after he goes? And he
does a thumbs up and pictures.
Well, and just acts like a brute and desecrates Arlington. That's not a time to say, well, how does it, it's. But again, we see it time and time again. For some reason, the mainstream media. What are we, 9 years in to Donald Trump's era in American politics?
9 years into Trump derangement syndrome, I think is what you mean, Joe Scarborough. What a very salient point he just made about the Arlington drama, the Arlington scandal. Have they got nothing else to talk about? This is absolutely sad. Pure retard BS here.
Still doesn't know how to cover Donald Trump. Their objectivity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage.
Don't be objective because it plays to Donald Trump's advantage. Why? Because journalists want to answer a question about how Kamala Harris would handle Afghanistan, what her views on Afghanistan happen to be. Do the American voters have the right to know where Kamala Harris stands on those issues? Or
it seems to me if Donald Trump were such a threat and if he were so bad, then being objective about him would simply be enough, after all. I mean, simply the truth about someone who is so awful, simply reporting the bare truth, the honest, unvarnished truth, would simply be enough. The American public, the American voters, would see him for what he is. Pure objectivity would just do the trick. But apparently, not the case.
Or should we be kept in the dark because Trump bad? Trump bad. That's what Joe Scarborough wants. He wants journalists to line up and say in unison over and over again, Trump bad, because that's been real effective, right? Listen, he wants to be a cheerleader for one side. That's great, go be a cheerleader for one side. But don't sit there on your boring ass morning show where you try to gaslight the American public about Biden's mental health and pass judgment on people who are trying to get Kamala Harris to answer questions on something amazing, policy, where she stands on policy. Because there are voters out there, believe it or not, who aren't partisan hacks. Those are the individuals who actually end up deciding elections, and they want to know where Kamala Harris stands on policy.
Well, Ana Kasparian over at the Young Turks is just laying down the law here. She's reading the Riot Act, not only to Joe Scarborough over at Morning Joe and those useless idiots over there, but I think really to the Young Turks themselves, to her co-host Cenk Uygur. And I mean, it seems to me that this is going to lead to some sort of massive eruption there, because Cenk, as anyone who's watched the Young Turks for more than 5 minutes, is just an out of control, over emotional baby. He is going to, apparently he's not there on today's show. So Anna's just, she's got free reign. She is laying it out as she sees it, which I think is great. And yeah, Anna, come to the light. Come to fight the good fight and keep spitting facts over there at the Young Turks.